highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The Balmain Peninsula's attraction to industrialists was its deep water and proximity to the town of Sydney.
2 early land grants occupied the peninsula.
Private George Whitfield of the New South Wales Corps received a grant in 1796. Lieutenant John Birch purchased the property in 1810 and built a house which he named Birchgrove. This historic house at 67 Louisa Road was demolished in 1967 and replaced by home units.
The remaining 550 acres were granted in 1800 to Dr. William Balmain, surgeon of the First Fleet. 15 months after receiving the grant, Balmain sold it to John Gilchrist in an unregistered dealing for 5 shillings. Gilchrist's agent built Waterview House in 1835. A plaque on the house at 16 Colgate Avenue commemorates the site.
The Balmain estate was advertised for sale in 1836. Subdivision was irregular and there was no constraint on size of allotments. At this time, Darling, Johnson and Nicholson streets were created.
Development was rapid. By 1846, there were more streets and a ferry service had been established. Balmain was the largest residential area of the colony.
The first Balmain Regatta was held in 1849.
Churches were built.
The original St Mary's hexagonal schoolhouse and church was in Adolphus Street. In front of it, another larger building later occupied the site. A school was conducted there and it was used by other community groups.
St Mary's Anglican Church on Darling Street was consecrated 3 years later, in 1848. Designed by Edmund Blackett, only the original chancel of Blackett's church remains.
The first St Augustine's Roman Catholic Church was dedicated in 1851. The present church opened in 1907.
The foundation stone of St Andrew's Congregational Church was laid in 1854. St Andrew's is a notable Balmain landmark. The Saturday Balmain markets are held in the grounds of the church.
The Presbyterian Church in Campbell Street was built in 1868.
St John's Church was licensed in 1882.
In 1853, a post and telegraph office opened in a grocer's shop. It provided postal services until 1887, when a post office opened at the corner of Darling and Montague Streets.
Balmain became a maritime suburb. Sea captains, boat builders and shipwrights resided in the area.
John Booth opened a steam sawmill in 1854. It produced a wide range of timber products for ships, housing, furniture and boxes. Booth's house, Surbiton, was almost in the centre of the works. The mill site became the location of the White Bay Container Terminal. From 1969, White Bay was the first port in New South Wales to handle containerised shipping. Container handling moved out of White Bay in 2004. The White Bay Cruise Terminal opened there in April 2013.
Captain Thomas Rowntree settled at Waterview Bay, now known as Mort Bay. He sold his ship, the Lizzie Weber, to finance the building of a patent slip. A partnership with Thomas Mort and J.S. Mitchell became Rowntree and Company. A shipyard and dry dock, Australia's first, opened in 1855. The business morphed into a maritime engineering enterprise. The Mort dry dock closed in 1958 and was filled in. Remnants preserved in Mort Bay Park include the outline of the dock.
The Thames Street Wharf, a late Victorian building, is possibly the last 19th century ferry structure in use on Sydney Harbour. Hundreds of dockyard employees used the wharf.
Elliott Brothers Chemical Works and a variety of foundries, sawmills, engineering workshops, ship repair and shipbuilding firms opened in the district.
Industrialisation created a need to house people. Thomas Mort's town of Waterview provided housing for dockyard workers.
As Balmain grew, cells were needed to detain short-term prisoners. Balmain's first police lock-up, the Balmain Watch House, was built in 1855. It closed when a police station attached to the courthouse opened in 1926. Today the building is the headquarters of the Balmain Association.
The municipality of Balmain was proclaimed in 1860.
The one-teacher school in Balmain became a national school in 1860. Since that time, other buildings have been added to the site.
The Nicholson Street School dates from 1883.
Birch Grove Public School opened in 1885.
In 1860, the Birch Grove estate was subdivided. A Hunters Hill developer, Joubert, purchased and subdivided the land backing onto Snails Bay. The estate was advertised as a miniature Bay of Naples. Few of the villa sites were sold. Sydney's boom period of the 1880s saw many allotments taken up and villas built.
The Jubilee Dock was a huge floating dry dock at Cameron's Cove on Johnston's Bay. The dock received its first ship, the Royal Tar, in 1887. 2 years later it was purchased by the Mort Dock and Engineering Company.
Early public transport was by boat. From the early days, watermen rowed residents from Millers Point to wharves at the east end of the peninsula. Almost all wharves are at the bottom of steep hills. Mackenzie, one of the watermen, lived in this cottage at 12 Darling Street, which was built by John Cavell, a Cornish stonemaster, in 1841.
In 1844, the first public ferry service between Balmain and Millers Point was established by Henry Perdreau, whose company became the Balmain Steam Ferry Company.
Horse bus services commenced when the first Glebe Island Bridge was opened in 1862.
The first steam tram service Darling Street in 1892. 10 years later it was electrified. The line down Darling Street had a counterweight dummy system that controlled trams on the steep single-line section of a track near the terminus at Darling Street Wharf. Trams operated until 1954, when they were replaced by buses.
The Loyal Balmain Lodge of Oddfellows met in a two-storey sandstone building at 236 Darling Street for over 100 years. Built in 1864, meetings were held upstairs. Downstairs was rented as business premises. From 1868 until 1886, the studio at the rear housed the Working Men's Institute, before it moved to a purpose-built building in 1887.
Next door to the Oddfellows building was the first suburban branch of the Bank of New South Wales, built in 1874 and in use until a much larger building was erected on another site.
By the 1860s, Balmain had become highly urbanised as a result of increasing industrialisation. Housing stretched along the water and started moving backwards down the peninsula.
In 1875, the original Balmain Fire Station, run by a volunteer force, was located in a couple of sheds in Booth Street. A fire station was built opposite the town hall in 1894.
Balmain Council acquired land at White Horse Point for public baths. The baths were open in January 1882. They were known as the Elkin Park Baths, Balmain Baths, Corporation Baths and White Horse Point Baths. In 1964 they were renamed in recognition of Dawn Fraser, local resident and Olympic swimming champion. Aquatic polo was played there in the 1880s and it was the home of Australia's first swimming club.
Birch Grove Park was established in 1881. The area was extended by the filling in of mudflats in Snails Bay. Within the park is Birch Grove Oval, regarded as the spiritual birthplace of rugby league in Australia, having hosted the first professional matches in 1908.
In the late 1890s, the Balmain Electorate Cricket Club was included in the Sydney Grade cricket competition. From 1897 to 1947, Birch Grade Oval was the headquarters of the club.
Balmain Rugby Union Football Club, established in 1873, was one of the foundation clubs of Australian rugby.
In 1884, a small cottage hospital was opened near the town hall. The hospital needed to expand and orderly was purchased in 1885. Parts of Audley remain in the present administration building.
In 1888, the building of a courthouse, post office and town hall created a civic precinct. The town hall dome was removed during World War II.
The heavy concentration of industry in Balmain created a strong trade union presence. The Painters and Dockers Union had its origin in the New South Wales Associated Labourers Union, also known as the Balmain Labourers Union, formed in May 1883. The Ship Painters and Dockers Hall in Mort Street was used by the Union from 1915 until 1990. It was a scene of noisy meetings and planned strikes.
April 1891 saw the Union heavily involved in the formation of the first branch of the Labour Electoral League of New South Wales, the forerunner of the Australian Labour Party.
Gladstone Park, which opened in 1890, was built on a site known as the Pigeon Ground. In the 1850s, pigeon shooting was a common sport in the area. Today the park covers a water storage reservoir. Construction of the Gladstone Park Reservoir was announced in 1912. Following public protests about losing the park, the Water Board buried the reservoir underground. Restoration of the park and the erection of a bandstand was a condition of construction. Before the construction of the reservoir, residents obtained their water supply from backyard wells or water carts. The valve house and the footings of the bandstand can still be seen.
At the beginning of the 20th century, speculative builders buying and building on land allotments shaped Balmain's landscape and its subsequent piecemeal development, which led to a great variety of housing.
The Loyalty Square War Memorial was unveiled in 1916 to commemorate Balmain servicemen who died during the World War I Dardanelles campaign. Before the memorial was erected, it was known as Unity Square.
The Sydney Morning Herald in 1924 described Balmain as a hive of industry. The population is so dense that viewing its hilly sides from the water, one would almost think that houses were sitting upon one another.
The Sydney Harbour Colliery established Sydney's only coal mine. It was the deepest coal mine ever to have been sunk in Australia. The coal was mined from under the harbour, with the surface works located next to Birchgrove Public School. Coal was produced from 1897 until 1931, and natural gas from 1937 to 1950.
Lever Brothers began operating an oil and copper plant in 1897. Ships moored at the company's wharfs to deliver cargo from South Sea Islands. The manufacture of Sunlight soap and glycerine in 1900 was followed by other products. Lever and Kitchen became the multinational corporation Unilever.
Colgate Palmolive opened a soap factory. Palmolive soap production in 1924 was followed by toothpaste in 1928. During the 1950s and 60s, shampoos and various household cleaning products were added. In 1993, the plant closed. The site was reopened in 1998 after being redeveloped as residential apartments.
Originally, Ballast Point, a sandstone neck of land on the peninsula, provided rocks as ballast for unladen ships. In 1928, the Texas company Australasia, later Caltex Australia, purchased the area for an oil terminal. The company had 30 tanks for oil storage until the 1980s. The Sydney Harbour Foreshore Authority acquired the land for use as public open space in 2002.
The small boat-building suburb had become an industrial centre. The housing of armies of employees connected with them changed the face of the old waterside suburb. The large-scale industry dominating the peninsula's foreshore, a source of employment for many locals, gave the suburb a reputation for noise and pollution.
The shoreline changed dramatically as factories and workshops moved out. Parklands and blocks of residential units replaced the factories, chimneys and cranes that were part of the skyline. The area became popular with professional and business people who wanted to live close to the city. Balmain and neighbouring Birchgrove were considered to be among Sydney's most desirable waterfront locations.
Peacock Point, named after Captain John Jenkins Peacock, who purchased the land in 1836, is the site of Allura Reserve. It was a lumberyard when acquired for public open space. The acquisition of the adjacent Fenwick and Company boat store site enlarged the area. The 19th century sandstone building, originally used as a tugboat store, is now a restaurant.
Today, much of Balmain's domestic past still exists. Workers' houses side by side with larger villas. Some notable buildings are
Clontarf Cottage in Waller Street, built in 1844 by Robert Blake, has been restored for community use.
Hampton Villa in Grafton Street was built in the late 1840s by cabinet maker the Honourable Edward Hunt, MLC. The villa was leased by Sir Henry Parkes, Premier of New South Wales and Father of Federation, in the 1880s.
Balmoral House in Waterview Street was built by Dr. Frederick Harper in 1853. The Beattie family lived there from 1876 until the 1930s. Henry Beattie owned a shipyard at Peacock Point.
Overlooking Cameron's Cove is Uinton House. The original house, named Blakevale, was built in 1854-55 by Robert Blake, a quartermaster turned civilian sheriff and a developer. It was a simple single-storied house with basement. In 1856, Major Ewan Wallace Cameron bought the house and renamed it Uinton. The house was substantially extended. An elaborate entrance portico, stone upper story and slate roof were added.
Clifton Villa in Ballast Point Road, built by George Ellsworthy Taylor, dates back to the 1860s. In 1871, John E. Manning, a steamboat proprietor, was listed as living there. From 1879, Mrs. Helen Chilcott used the house as a private boarding school for girls. Between 1973 and 1977, it became the premises of Chiron College, a progressive late secondary school. The house has reverted to residential use.
William Carse bought land in Wells Street in 1849. He built Inglefield House, which was renamed Louisaville by William Harris Ariel.
Balmain is noted for its hotels. Darling Street is dotted with hotel buildings.
Near the East Balmain Wharf is the former Shipyards Arms Hotel, established in 1844 as a Dolphin Inn. The name was changed in 1846 to the Shipyards Arms.
Number 50 is the former Waterford Arms Hotel. In 1841, the building was Balmain's first bakery. It operated as a hotel from 1846 until 1851.
On the corner of Nicholson Street, the original Unity Hall Hotel. Established in 1846, it closed in 1875. The licence being transferred to the new Unity Hall Hotel. The Oddfellows Hall sign refers to its role as a meeting place for the Balmain Manchester Unity Independent Order of Oddfellows.
The 1875 commercial hotel is now the East Village.
In 1851, number 147 was the Balmain Hotel. It was known as the Waverley when it closed in 1910 as a result of the reduction vote.
The Albion on the corner of Ann Street was built in 1860. The licence was later moved to the old Unity Hall Hotel.
On the opposite corner, the former 1865 Volunteer Hotel, named because its association with the Volunteer Fire Brigade, closed in 1928.
Dating from 1870, the Golden Eagle's name was changed to the Circular Saw, the London Tavern and eventually the London Hotel.
The Cricketers Arms Hotel was established in 1872.
The new Unity Hall Hotel, known as the birthplace of the Australian Labor Party, opened in 1875. It was rebuilt in 1919.
The 1879 Town Hall Hotel was renovated in 1930.
The licence of the original Star Hotel in Mort Street was transferred to a new pub on the corner of Darling and Elliott Streets in 1930. Today, the Cat and Fiddle.
Other hotels throughout the suburb are
the former Pacific Hotel in Stephen Street, an early opener, a popular working men's club, was also known as the Opera House. Trading from 1865 until 1991, it is now a private residence.
In Beatty Street.
The Exchange, built in 1885, was the largest in the area. The original building consisted of 40 rooms connected with corridors 7 feet wide.
Dick's Hotel, called the People's Pub, has been described as keeping it real since 1874.
The 1879 Mertonville was one of the hotels closed under the 1909 reduction vote.
In Cameron Street, 3 hotels.
Known as the Dock Inn in 1867, the name was later changed to the Dry Dock Inn.
Dating from 1879, the Sir William Wallace is the only hotel in its original state.
The 1878 Waterview closed in 1909, another victim of the reduction vote.
In Mort Street.
The Forth and Clyde closed in 1972. The building was occupied by various businesses before being used for private housing.
This 1920 building replaced the 1866 Star Hotel. The licence was transferred to the present-day Cat and Fiddle in 1930. Today a residential building.
In Palmer Street,
the Kent Hotel was established in 1865. It closed in 1976, now a private residence.
The 1881 Lord Nelson was another victim of the 1909 reduction vote, another private residence.
The Riverview in Birch Grove Road opened in 1880. Dawn Fraser was the publican from 1978 until 1983.
The 1878 Royal Oak in College Street was originally Hollis's Hotel.
In Mullins Street, the Norfolk Pine, built in 1879, was also known as Walsh's Hotel before reverting to its original name. It closed in 1938.
The Rob Roy in Adolphus Street dates from 1857. Known as the Oriental between 1871 and 1876 before reverting back to Rob Roy.
As it was in the 19th century, the Balmain Peninsula, with its proximity to the city of Sydney, remains a desirable location.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel, it's free. Coming soon, Glebe, Churchland, Rural Retreat, Working Class Suburb. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com.